Hello and welcome to St Mary's Church in Ely. My name's Chris, I'm the rector, and it's my absolute pleasure to welcome you this morning. Whoever you are, wherever you're from, you are welcome here. In a moment we'll have our Sunday sermon, but before that, just a reminder that at the moment we are meeting on a Sunday in Bishop Woodford House in the chapel there on Barton Road in Ely. So if you're thinking about returning on a Sunday morning, please do so at Bishop Woodford House, Barton Road in Ely, where we'll be meeting in the chapel and in the classrooms surrounding it. We'll be serving coffee every week, so do come for the 8:30, the 9:45 or the 11 o'clock services. Meanwhile, all of our normal weekday events and Saturday events will happen in our church halls as they would any other week. So to access those, you come down the right-hand side of Oliver Cromwell's house, which is the tourist office, through the vicarage car park and through the gate from there into the church. You'll find yourself at the back end of the church and be able to access the church halls from that point. So if you're used to coming in for any activity, please do continue to do so in that way. So without further ado, I will hand you over now for our sermon. Thank you.
From heaven you came, helpless babe, entered our world, your glory veiled. It is Christ we're serving. This is our God, the servant King. He calls us now to follow Him, to bring our lives as a daily offering of worship to the servant King, to bring our lives as a daily offering of worship to the servant King.
Our reading today comes from St. John's Gospel, chapter 13, beginning at verse 1. It was just before the Passover feast. Jesus knew that the time had come for him to leave this world and go to the Father. Having loved his own who were in the world, he now showed them the full extent of his love. The evening meal was being served, and the devil had already prompted Judas Iscariot, son of Simon, to betray Jesus. Jesus knew that the Father had put all things under his power, and that he had come from God and was returning to God. So he got up from the meal, took off his outer clothing, and wrapped a towel round his waist. After that, he poured water into a basin and began to wash his disciples' feet, drying them with the towel that was wrapped around him. He came to Simon Peter, who said to him, "Lord, are you going to wash my feet?" Jesus replied, "You do not realize what I'm doing, but later you will understand." "No," said Peter, "you shall never wash my feet." Jesus answered, "Unless I wash you, you have no part with me." "Then, Lord," Simon Peter replied, "not just my feet, but my hands and my head as well." Jesus answered, "A person who has had a bath needs only to wash his feet. His whole body is clean. And you are clean, though not every one of you." For he knew who was going to betray him, and that was why he said not everyone was clean. When he had finished washing their feet, he put on his clothes and returned to his place. "Do you understand what I have done for you?" he asked them. "You call me teacher and Lord, and rightly so, for that is what I am. Now that I, your Lord and teacher, have washed your feet, you also should wash one another's feet. I've set you an example that you should do as I have done for you. I tell you the truth, no servant is greater than his master, nor is a messenger greater than the one who sent him. Now that you know these things, you will be blessed if you do them." Space, the final frontier. These are the voyages of the Starship Enterprise. Its 5-year mission to explore strange new worlds, to seek out new life and new civilizations, to boldly go where no man has gone before. So began every episode of Star Trek, a statement of the mission of the Starship Enterprise, its mission, what it was sent to do. That word mission, it's all about sending. And Jesus, just before he left the earth, said, "As the Father has sent me, so I am sending you." So our mission echoes Jesus' mission. What Jesus sends us to do echoes what the Father had sent Jesus to do. We have a mission, and it's a Christ-like mission. Over the last 4 weeks, we've been looking at the Anglican Church's marks of mission: to proclaim the good news of the kingdom, to teach, baptize, and nurture new believers, to seek to transform unjust structures of society, and to strive to safeguard the integrity of creation. And those 4 marks of mission have been summarized as tell, teach, transform, treasure. And today, tend. The final mark of mission that we're going to look at is to respond to human need by loving service. To respond to human need by loving service. Put very simply, this mark of mission is going to be about fulfilling the command to love our neighbour. Wherever there's need, be that among our friends or in our local community or in our country or globally, our calling, our mission is to take practical love into that situation, to serve people in need. And if we're going to do that part of a mission in a Christ-like way, then it's good to think about the classic example of service which the Gospels give us, that occasion we heard about in our reading when Jesus washed his disciples' feet. It was the night before Jesus died. He and the 12 disciples were about to go to share the Passover meal together, and it would be their last meal together. The room where they were going to eat their meal had been prepared, and one thing that had been done to get ready was to put a bowl of water and a towel by the door. This was a perfectly normal thing in that hot country with its dirty, dusty roads and people who always wore sandals. If you had guests coming, then as they arrived, they'd have their feet washed by one of your servants. Nothing could be more soothing than to have your dirty, sweaty feet washed for you. It was a wonderful way of making people feel welcome. But of course, Jesus and his disciples had no servants, so one of them would have to do it. But no one did. It was a job for a servant, and for the lowest ranking servant at that, and none of them was willing to stoop that low. But Jesus did. He took the towel and wrapped it round his waist. He took the bowl of water and went to the 12, knelt down in front of each of them in turn, washed their feet for them, and dried them on the towel. And we can imagine the embarrassed silence as those 12 who'd thought it a rather demeaning job found their feet being washed by the Son of God. And Jesus said to them, "I've set you an example that you should do as I have done for you." Service. It isn't a complicated idea. It's simply following the example of Jesus. It's showing love to our neighbour, responding to their needs, showing love above all in practical ways. And let me pick out 3 attitudes with which we can approach this mark of our mission. And first of all, humility. When Jesus washed his disciples' feet, this was an act of humble service. Those 12 all considered foot washing to be a job that was beneath them. It was slaves' work. None of them was ready to stoop that low. But Jesus Christ, the Son of God himself, chose not to stand on his dignity, but rolled up his sleeves, got down on his knees, and got his hands dirty. That's humility. It reminds me of something I read about the work of the religious community founded by Mother Teresa in India. Many of the people they cared for were people considered by Indian society to be untouchable. But members of the community would willingly touch them. Humility means that when we serve, we in no way consider ourselves to be superior to the person in need. And members of that community of Mother Teresa's, they were all on the rota for cleaning the toilets. That included Mother Teresa herself. No matter that she was a figure of world renown, she took her turn at cleaning the loos. Dirty feet, dirty loos. The things we might find ourselves doing when we serve may well be things we'd rather not do. They may be unpleasant. But if we're to follow the example of Jesus who washed dirty, sweaty feet, we'll do such things willingly. So humility, it means a Christ-like selflessness in the way we serve people in need. Humility, and then a second attitude, availability. When Jesus went to that upper room, he went to share a meal with his friends. But the circumstances he encountered when he got there meant that his plan was changed a bit. The meal didn't proceed quite as expected. He instead washed all their feet. And only after that did they get on with the meal that they'd come for. And if you read through the Gospels, you'll see lots of examples of this sort of thing, lots of occasions when Jesus stopped what he was doing in order to serve others, or when he allowed people in need to interrupt him. Think of the paralysed man who was lowered through the hole in the roof. There was Jesus busy preaching to the crowd who'd squashed into the house. But when this man on the stretcher arrived at his feet, he interrupted his preaching and talked to the man and healed him. Or think of Jairus' daughter. Jesus was just about to talk to a large crowd that had gathered to listen to him when Jairus came and begged him to come and heal his daughter. So Jesus left the crowd hanging and he went off with Jairus. And on the way, there was another interruption as a woman suffering from continuous bleeding touched Jesus' robe as he walked past with the hope that that would give her healing. Jesus stopped and he talked with her. And only after he'd cared for her did he carry on to Jairus' house and heal the girl there. Or think of blind Bartimaeus interrupting Jesus. Jesus was just leaving Jericho. He was heading to Jerusalem, where the last week of his life was about to begin. But when he heard Bartimaeus cry out, "Jesus, Son of David, have mercy on me," he stopped, and even though his thoughts must have been on the confrontation and suffering awaiting him in Jerusalem, he took the time to talk to Bartimaeus and heal him. When people needed help, Jesus didn't look at his diary and tell them that he could make 2:30 next Wednesday. He stopped what he was doing and he ministered to them. He was available. Was it always convenient for him? Almost certainly not. And as we seek to serve others in a way that follows the example of Jesus, we can't expect that it'll always be convenient for us. But we'll do our very best to be available. Humility, availability, and then a third Christ-like attitude with which to approach our service of those in need, and perhaps a rather obvious one, love. Jesus' act of washing his disciples' feet was an example of service for them, for us to follow. But it was also an explanation of what was going to happen less than 24 hours later. It was going to help the disciples understand what he was doing in dying for them. The foot washing acted as a sort of visual aid. Jesus dying on the cross, like the washing of the feet, was an act of humility. He didn't stand on his dignity and say, "I'm the Son of God, you can't do that to me." He willingly went through with it for the good of others. And just as at the Last Supper, he humbly washed his disciples' feet, So in dying on the cross, he made possible our spiritual washing. We can be cleansed from our sins. So Jesus' washing of his disciples' feet and his death on the cross, both of them acts of humble cleansing, and both of them acts of love. What motivated Jesus to wash his disciples' feet was his love for them. What motivated Jesus to die for us on the cross was his love for us. And so we pray that God will give us Christ-like love, Christ-like compassion for the people whom we encounter who are in need. But one word of warning, all this makes it very clear that love can lead to sacrifice. Our serving people in need can be costly, whether in terms of time or of money or in other ways. Service is often sacrificial. The church where I was vicar until a few years ago established a link with a community in Burundi, one of the world's poorest countries. Ruth and I had the opportunity 3 times of visiting that community, of being involved with the community transformation program which our linked charity was working at, and also of learning a little and sharing a little in church life there. And I remember one Sunday service when the time came for people's offerings to be received. This was quite a big event. One of the many choirs there sang and sang very joyfully whilst people walked to the front and placed their gifts in the baskets that had been put there for this purpose. And as they did so, the person sitting next to Ruth, who was translating for her, said, "These are gifts for the poor people." Who were the people bringing these gifts to serve the poor? People living on something like $1 a day. People who, by almost any standards, were themselves poor. So this week's mark of mission, to respond to human need by loving service. For each of us, that might mean doing something at an individual level. We might help a friend or a neighbour who's in trouble. It might mean doing something at the community level, contributing in one way or another to work of the food bank or CAP or another local initiative. It might mean doing something at the national level. Or it might be at the global level. We're all aware of huge needs that people in our world face. And as Chris reminded us a couple of weeks ago, this service may well go hand in hand with campaigning to tackle the causes of those needs. To respond to human need by loving service, our final mark of mission. It's about practical, caring, Christian love. It's about Christ-like humility and selflessness, ready to get our hands dirty. It's about a Christ-like availability, a willingness to serve regardless of whether or not it's convenient. It's about Christ-like love, that fruit of the Spirit that enables us to serve even if it involves making sacrifices. To respond to human need by loving service. That's such an important part of our mission. It's what we're sent to do, to boldly go and serve.
All the room was hushed and still, and when the bowl was filled, he stooped to wash their feet. And when it was complete, he said, is what I'm asking you to do. This is why I'm kneeling here beside you. This is what I want my church to be. This is what I want the world to see. Who it is you follow. Love each other, one another. Love each other in the way that I have loved you. Walk together, and whatever comes, love each other in the way that I have loved you. Let the room be hushed and still. Let us go to where he kneels and join him as he serves and learn his ways of love. He said, this is what I'm asking you to do. This is why I'm kneeling here beside you. This is what I want my church to be. This is what I want the world to see. Who it is you follow. Love each other, one another. Love each other in the way that I have loved you. Walk together, and whatever comes, love each other in the way that I have loved you. Love each other, one another. Love each other in the way that I have loved you. Walk together, and whatever comes, love each other in the way that I have loved you.
So it's been great to worship with you this morning. Hopefully we'll see you again next week, either online or in person in the chapel at Bishop Woodford House. Meanwhile, have a great week and we'll see you soon.